Greetings, my friends. Today we're going to make the Old World charm pendant. Well, to make our charm pendant, I've got a lot of things out for you today. But as always, I recommend that you watch through the video and really see how you want to make your pendant. This is a really personal kind of piece of jewelry because each person has their own favorite colors, and you can buy little charms that mean something to individuals, make them for gifts, and of course for yourself. So it's a fun project, but it's a project that you want to really personalize. And I want to kind of emphasize that today. So we're starting with a couple of unusual things. One is we're going to mix some glitter into our UV resin. So I've got a little spoon here to get the glitter out, and I've got a little container. So that's something that we haven't used in the past. You'll probably want to have. Also, we'll be using a craft knife today to insert bails, a nice easy way that I think you'll like. And we're going to be using a few more findings. When you're making a charm piece, you want to hang things from it, and you want them to look really finished. So I use these glue-on bails. They're really nice if you're going to put one on each side or along the bottom. I'll show you how we're going to do that. You can get glue-on bails at Fire Mountain, and I've never really glued one on, even though they're called that, so don't be misled by that. It's just that they have kind of a well area in them. On one side, they have a kind of an arch, and there's a place for you to put your glue, and people use it all the time with epoxies and stuff. But that's not the way I use them because we're dealing with clay, and I'm going to insert them and bake them in. But that's just good to know that that's the kind that they are. You'll also need head pins. I'm using all of my favorite today, my antique gold, but you're going to want to pick the metal that you want to use. These head pins are really handy to have around because you can hang charms from them, of course. They form a stopper on the bottom. But also, you can make a loop in them and make them into eye pins. So if you're going to just stock one kind of pin, it's going to be the head pin because it's much easier to make an eye than it is to make, a head. So that's just an FYI. You're also going to be using some chain. Now you can hang your pendant from strung beads and all kinds of methods, and we may have a chance to do that if we don't run out of time. But I'm just going to attach a chain to it today. I think you'll see how pretty that looks. This chain's from Walmart, and it's really reasonable, and it's really pretty good chain. I'm also using some jump rings to attach one thing to another. These little eye screws that we've used in previous classes make an easy way to join things in the bottom. A couple of lobster claw clasps and a couple of bead caps. Now these bead caps have a little bit of a story. Sometimes you can't find the bead caps you want, to buy easily in the craft stores and stuff. Of course, you could always order them. But look around because sometimes strung beads have these beautiful caps. And this is kind of a good example of it. These are just acrylic beads, and I usually buy glass, but they're really kind of pretty. I can use them in another project, but what I bought this strand for, which was about this long when I got it, was to get these caps. So when you're looking for supplies, just sort of be open-minded about where you might find them because I've really had good success with that. These are from Joann Fabrics. The tools are the things that we use for really any jewelry making. And I think I might have mentioned earlier that you can get a 3-in-1 tool at Walmart also, and it's got a flat edge, a round edge, and a cutter. And you could get by for years with just these 3 shapes or just that one 3-in-1 tool, because that's the one that you use over and over. Now, this is the way I sort my beads. I like to keep them by color because that way I can build a project with everything here in front of me and not have to get out, like 12 boxes to find every little thing. Some people sort them by shape. Maybe you want a faceted round. Maybe you want to get some of these E-beads, seed beads, teardrops, and you want to put them all in a different container. Well, then you got to get all of them out, So that's the way I like to do it. The findings I keep in a big one. And that's because your metal is going to be something you go to over and over and over again. The reason that I deal almost exclusively in one kind of metal is because it can be very expensive to stock the items that you need in all the different metals. So what I used to do is I'd have my silver and I'd have my gold and I'd have my gunmetal and I'd have some black and then I'd have my antique gold and I'd have my copper. Well, then I go to get, let's say, a crimp bead, a crimp cover, big jump ring, a lobster claw, a charm, okay, a spacer. Well, I've got to stock all those colors and all those things, and believe me, it just breaks you. So if there's a color of metal that you really like and that you know you're going to use over and over again, really concentrate on building up your stock of that one thing. And that's just some advice later on. You're going to thank old Pandora for telling you that. So I've got my Lisa Pavelka magic gloss resin and the UV light that goes with it. And another FYI is that you can buy a nail salon type of light. They're not super expensive and they're larger if you do a lot of projects or larger projects. And I've got some texture stamps to use. These are the Cluedettes that you've seen in other videos. So that about covers it. We always have our toothpicks with resin. You need some kind of a cutter. Doesn't have to be this shape. I use this oval a lot because it's a nice size, just big enough to be kind of a statement piece. And that's about it. We're going to start with texturing and cutting our clay. I've chosen two of the Cluedettes and I'm going to make a front and a back. Now you saw before that sometimes when we're making a front and a back, we're doing it at the same time because it's going to be one piece. But this is going to be sandwiched together, so we don't have to make them at the same time, okay? We can have one side that's not textured and one side that is. And when that's the case, I do it like this. I want to get a really good impression. I've got my water around if I need it to keep it from sticking, but the temperature in this room is about 68 degrees, and that's really good for this kind of work, and I know it's not going to stick. People in Florida and other really moist areas and people in warm areas pretty much always have to use a release agent of some kind to get the right effect. So I can feel with my fingertips whether I'm getting a good impression in here and when it's ready. Some people use a wood block and stand up and press down on it, and I have that and I use it sometimes, but I think this is going to be fine for today. Well, that's pretty, it looks perfect. I'm going to pick it up with my blade because we always do that. Once you've got any kind of processing, cutting or stamping done to your clay, you want to pick it up with the blade. Keep it from stretching out too much. So this is going to be for the front. And I'm going to cut these to size now. Okay, so that when I put my cutter on this later and cut it to the shape that I want, I won't accidentally get any of the untextured parts. We'll cut that back. We'll make them just about the same size. That doesn't have to be perfect because they're going to end up, being cut with that. And last, I'm going to make an impression on this blue, which is going to be an accent part of the design. I'm going to place my bottom piece just on a little piece of cardstock here. Then I'm going to layer up the top. And this one. Now this one's different because I want to cut it and have it only cover part of the design. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to pick my favorite part that I like the best. And I'm going to cut it out. Okay. And only part of this is going to go on this final design. So I'm going to choose the part of it that I want to stay on. It's not easy. I think it's going to be that part right there. Now I'm going to choose the part of this that I like the best, and I already know where that is. I really like when that design comes together there. I'm going to cut through all three at the same time. I do it that way because you'd really have a heck of a time trying to get all this stuff lined up if you cut it separately. So I just do it together. And already we've got our base focal area on this. So that leaves me with a two-tone focal. It's got a nice clean edge on it. Now don't forget, you can always texture or embellish this edge in any way that you want to. With your stamps, with your ball stylus. You could just get any straight edge and make lines around it. It's a really fun thing to do. But we're going to move on to the next part. What I'm going to do is make a little snake, because I want to bring a little bit more blue onto that side of it, and I think you'll like the way it looks. And one of the reasons I chose those little filigree curlicue type of pieces in the first place to make an impression with was because I want to make a curlicue that's going to wrap around there and kind of finish that edge. I'll show you what I mean. Just take a small bit of the cut off blue and make a snake. This can be tapered, it can be all one size. You want to practice this several times and see what you really like, because before it's cured or baked, you can move it around quite a bit. But I know that I want mine to be tapered and go from about that thickness there to a really tiny, teeny little point so I can curl it up. So I'm going to stretch out the point and I'm going to lay it down. And it's going to start at the bottom of the design, and it's going to conform to that curve right there, and then make a little curl. And I'm going to put the bails in there. Now the first one, is no big deal because it's just wherever it is. But when you do the second one, make sure you line it up and make sure it's where you want it. It's just clay. We can always seal up that slit and make another one, but once it's baked in there, it's not so easy to move them. In fact, it's impossible. So you got those. Kind of settle it back down a little bit so we don't have a lump where that is. It looks good. And now we're going to put a place to hang our charms. So I've got my middle right here, and I'm going to put my screw-in bail in there. And all the last one has to be is symmetrical with that one. So you've got your focal just the way you want it. You've got your hardware well embedded in it. And we're going to bake this for 45 minutes at 275 degrees. Our pendant is baked. It looks pretty good. And we're going to add the UV resin. You may also notice that I put a rhinestone on there. I always keep these around. Just get a couple of different colors every time you go to the store so you'll have them. And the reason I keep them around is not just because I like rhinestones, but sometimes they are really good to cover stuff up. And when I was making texture with my ball stylus, I like the dots effect, but this dot was like really deep and ended up just kind of looking like a hole. So I put a rhinestone on it. Now the reason I'm admitting that to you is because, sometimes things go off the track a little bit, but I wasn't going to give up on this whole pendant over it, and I wasn't going to look at a hole either. So there's always something that you can do to make it be pretty. And that's what I decided to do. So I'm going to put my resin on this now. And as usual, I have it upside down in my toothpicks because I want it to flow freely. I'm going to start on this side. I'm going to do it first. When your piece has an uneven texture like this does, just choose a spot to start in and make sure that it's the way you want it before you go to the next spot. And the reason I'm saying that is because if I just squirt this in the center like I usually do and just let it go all over the place, it's going to cut down on the time I have to manipulate it like this, see? So I know it's going to go down there, but I'm not going to place it down there. I know on the other ones I always said start in the middle and stuff, and usually you do, but this has really got a split level here. So just choose one of the levels to do first, and then you'll feel confident that it's the way you want it, before it goes all over the place. This is a nice resin because, it's got such a nice thickness that it really helps you to do what it needs to do without being real messy. You'll see I've got Q-tips out though. We don't have a bezel to hold this in, and if it does go over the edge, we're just going to clean it off with that Q-tip. So I'm going to start drawing it into this area and making sure it gets on the tail of my little curly Q really nicely. I'm going to let it go over the stone. You know, you could go to a lot of trouble to go around the stone, but when you have resin on top of a faceted stone, it causes it to have kind of a mirror effect, and it's really interesting. And I found that out by accident, honestly, because, you know, I thought the faceted stone would still show its angles with the resin over it, but it doesn't. It renders it like facet free, and oh, something about that's got kind of a mystery to it. So I'm going to let it flow right over that. I'm not concerned with anything but keeping it on the surface of this piece right now. Any place you don't draw your toothpick, it will be kind of a dull spot. So you want to go up and over that edge and over to this edge. Now, just like the other pieces we did with resin, don't worry about the fact that it's going to pull in a little bit. That's exactly what you want it to do. It's creating a dome effect that's really, really pretty. And if it pulls in more than you're happy with, you can just do a second coat and draw it out to the edges, like we did with our tiles in the World Traveler bracelet and jewelry set. Okay? So already I've got a lot of magnification of my design, and I've got a lot of enhancement of my sparkle in the clay. And it really makes this piece. Now, obviously, you could make this one without any resin on top, and it's pretty. And it's got a Baroque kind of appearance. The slightly more dull surface, you know, gives it kind of an antique-y look, and it really is pretty. But you know, we're working with a lot of mixed media in this course, and I just want to take advantage of that. So that's looking nice and even. And I'm going to just leave it on this card and place it into my UV light for 15 minutes. Now let's work on one of our charms. This is going to be a centerpiece. It's going to hang from the middle ring. And what we're going to do is put some glittery UV resin in it to go with the color in the other beads. And all I need for that is some resin and some glitter. I've made a lot of these in different colors, and it's been just so much fun. Now that's plenty. That may be a little bit more than what we need. But you know, this stuff doesn't set up until you cook it. So what I did the other times is I made earrings, and I had enough for 3 of these little bezels. So you see I've used about 4 times this blade. You know, you kind of got to go by eyeball there. I'm going to mix it in well. And I'm going to start dropping it into my bezel. So we've got a nice little charm that we've made to go on our pendant. But anyway, I'm going to show you how to put that on and how to put the other charms on. So that's going to be the center one, and it's going to hang down a little bit lower. And let me show you how I'm going to make the charms for the sides. Now these charms look like this. There's going to be one on each side. And I'll show you how I made it. Out of my little stash, I selected this little bicone, bead shaped like that, points on each end. Then I took one of my bead caps and this nice faceted rondelle. Rondelle is a flat round bead like this. And then just a little bit of a rounded one that I got. And a plain bead at the top. Now, guarantee you, your charms aren't going to look like this because you've got your own beads you like to use in your own colors. But that's a good size for what we're doing, and you'll see why when we put it on. So that's how you make your charm. You're really just threading things onto a head pin. It can be all kinds of things. For the center charm, I'm going to show you how to do one with a chain, and that's a really handy thing too. So once we've got it like we want it, I'm going to make a nice bend here, just like that. And we've probably made eye pins a dozen times on my videos, but I always show you again because people kind of struggle with it. So once you've made your bend, you want to make a loop in this. And I use the cutter resting just like that, because when it's touching my cuticle and laying on top of my nail, I know that they're all going to be the same length. So sometimes when you're going to hang a whole bunch, you know, across a bracelet or a necklace, you don't want them to go like that. You know, you want them to really be pretty uniform. So that's just a good trick to use. The way you hold your wire, you're going to see a spot, you're going to go to that spot, and that's better than having to measure all those, which I used to do. Anyway, I've got my length the way I want it. I'm going to grab it, give it one turn. I'm going to let go of it, grab it again, and bring it the rest of the way in. And that's going to result in a really nice loop that you can depend on. So I'm going to be sure that that's tight, doesn't have any space, and I'm going to hang it from my pendant on one side. Now you could put this directly on here. You may be thinking, well, why not? Well, because you know, you see necklaces where they kind of stick off to one side, and earrings where they don't dangle freely, and that's why I like to add a ring. So I've got my little ring. It's really small. Open it the way we're supposed to open it, of course, this way, never this way. And I'm going to put it on here. That's two charms, and we're going to make the center one now. So I'll take this charm and hang it on here. We're going to put a little something on that chain to give it interest. I've got some of these beads that I really like. They can be anything that you want to put on here, but I like them to be a little bit on the dangly side, so I chose this. Also, you're going to find beads sometimes that you really want to use, but the hole is a little bit too big and it slides off the pin. So when you have that, just add something at the bottom like that. That's what I did today. And another tip with working on a bead like this is it's very easy to crack this part out when you make your loop at the top. So you're really well off to just put something at the top as well. So I'm just going to go simple with this, and I'm going to add a bead on each end. And I'm going to hang this little charm on the chain. I am going to use rings for this because we really want them to be loose and dangly. That looks cute. And don't forget, you can always make charms that feature metallic pieces too, with just the glasses spacers between the metallic. And it really gives you a different look for something like this. I really like that about it. So I can take bits and pieces, just space them off with things that you have. I was really liking these E-beads, or some people call them pony beads, but actually they're E-beads. And these are frosty and these are shiny, and they just kind of give a really nice effect to that. And that's probably plenty big enough for these kind of dangle. You don't want them to be too bulky. There are two ways to go when you're going to hang a pendant like this one. One of them is to put rings in each loop, cut your chain in half, and attach it that way. And I do that sometimes. The other way to do it is to thread it through the two loops. I like both methods, and today I'm going to thread it through because I kind of like the look of the chain going across here. So I've got a 22-inch piece of chain. I usually go long on mine, and I'll tell you why. Some people like to wear them long, yes. But when they're long, you can always make them shorter by just attaching your lobster claw, you know, at a different space in the chain. When they're short, you can't make them longer. So I usually give my customers 22 inches of chain to work with. They can do it wherever they want to. And I like to put a little charm at the end of the chain. So that way if it dangles down the back of their neck, you know, it looks pretty. I'll show you how to do that. So I've got my lobster claw here. And for the end, I'm going to make one last little charm. I've got these pretty crystals. They're just a little bit deeper blue, which I think really shows it off. And I'm going to put my metal at the top of these fragile cone-shaped drops. So our piece is finished. It has lots of mystery and motion. I like that about it. And you know, your piece is going to be very individual with all the colors and all the shapes and the designs that really please you. And I hope you'll do that. I'll show you a couple of other things that you can do I think you'll really enjoy. This one's made, as we talked about a little bit, with a beaded chain rather than a purchased plain chain. And it's really fun to do, you know, to select your clay colors and your bead colors and make it go together. And it's got a charm bundle like the one we made today, with various items hanging from one thing to give it fullness. And this is a Natasha bead, and here on Curious in one of my other courses I show you how to make Natasha beads. This one turned out to be sort of like an owl. It kind of looks like a fish and it kind of looks like an owl, and so, you know, I call it the owlfish. But it's just a piece of clay that I cut down the middle and opened like a book, and it gave me these, you know, dual images. And it's super easy. You know, I think you'll like doing it. So check that out on some of my other Curious courses. Here's a piece with some resin on it and with a hanging charm like the one we made today. And, you know, we talked about it a little bit. If you mix up a little extra resin, you know, why not make earrings? And they'd look really cute with this. And it's easy to sell sets like this. And here's one with resin and a transfer, like when we did our World Traveler sets and that stuff. And I'm just really taking findings and embedding them into the clay, and then sort of taking that design out to the chain. So this gives you lots of ideas. You know, you can put some little rhinestones on your findings. You know, it's pretty endlessly creative. And here's something that I made with the resin and the glitter in it, because I really like the color of it. And I just embedded a charm in it, just a little flat butterfly that I had kind of laying around. You could put a bead in there, all kinds of things. So those are ideas for you, and I hope you'll make lots of jewelry. See you next time. Bye-bye.